production is very high. Again, the reason is because of the increasing research, the increasing interaction among the scholars, among the researchers, and as a result the increasing production of this communication or interaction that takes place in the forms of various documents, and at the same time it is made convenient by the presence of ICT, because it is easily produced, it is easily made available to different parts of the globe, and that is a factor that makes these available very easily. And at the same time these are available in different formats, and we are already aware of the printed forms of documents. Besides these, the e-forms of documents, these are also available in a vast number, and thus this is a very important factor that is affecting this concept that we call resource sharing. As a result of these changing demands, the changing users and the changing documents, there is a change in the libraries also. There is a change in the picture, the image, the concept of libraries, and naturally that has to be there, because library is an open system. If it doesn't interact with the changing environment, it will no more be an open system, and that is why we find that our libraries are also changing. And just have a look at this particular slide. We have tried to summarize what are these changes that are taking place in libraries. These are that they are changing from standalone to networked libraries. They are changing from collection based to access based libraries. They are changing from services, moving from document based to information based, and physical existent to electronic and virtual libraries. We'll discuss for a moment each of these different points that we have been just reading out here, that these libraries are moving from standalone to networked libraries. What do we mean by that? Actually, the libraries earlier used to be independent, different separate units, but nowadays we find that libraries depend on each other, and that is what we mean to say that they are networked. They are working jointly, they are working in collaboration, they are working in cooperation. This is what is meant when we say they are moving away from standalone to networked libraries. The next point is that they are moving from collection based to access based. You would remember, if you had a experience of libraries, we used to measure a library by the collection, by the amount of documents it had. We used to say it is a very good library because it was a big library with a huge collection. So this is how you used to measure the success or quality of a library, by the amount of documents it used to have. But nowadays it is no more so. You may say it is a very good library, but you see it is a library that is just a one-room library, or not even that. That is what we mean to say when we say moving away from physical existence to electronic and virtual libraries. So we have digital libraries, we have e-libraries, we have virtual libraries. So this is a change that is taking place in the physical conception of libraries. And similarly, the services that these libraries are providing have changed from document based to information based, and this gives us an idea of why we were saying that moving from physical existence to virtual libraries. So these are the changes that are taking place in libraries. So before discussing what is resource sharing, I would like to just summarize here that we had discussed the changes that are taking place in the users, the changes that are taking place in the documents, and thus the changes that are taking place in libraries. So it is in this background that we should understand resource sharing, that these are changes that are taking place, and that is why we are having resource sharing. And it is here I have tried to define what is resource sharing. If we just go behind and see the literal meaning, it is using each other's resources. It is very clear from the term itself, resource sharing. So if I just have given here a definition from a standard source, Edmonds, he has defined it as reciprocal beneficial sharing of resources developed or pre-existing by two or more bodies. So from this definition we can gather that it is a reciprocal relation between the organizations, and this reciprocal relation is for the benefit of all those involved, and these all those involved could be two or more than two organizations. So this is what we understand by resource sharing. And when we talk of this resource sharing in the context of libraries, again point 3 says that it refers to libraries sharing their resources, including the sources of information, staff or professional expertise, infrastructure, as well as finance. So after having defined resource sharing, we have seen that when we talk of resource sharing in libraries, it is the mutually beneficial sharing of different kinds of resources in libraries, and these resources could be the professional expertise of staff, the collection, the different kinds of documents, as well as the infrastructure. So this is what we understand by resource sharing. If we go further, that why it has to be done, why libraries should share their resources. So we see here that it is due to the reason that the documents are available in plenty, their rate of increase is such that it is termed explosion, they are available in variety of formats, at times being duplicated also. Here we mean to say that the same document available in different formats, that means the duplication. Similarly, the channels of availability of these documents are also varied, adding to the complexity of their acquisition. Here we can give an example of grey literature, where it is not as easy to acquire as it is generally to the normal trade channels, and the prices of these documents are on the increase. So it is the availability of documents in plentiness, in different formats, and availability through different channels, as well as their increasing prices. So all these are factors that go against the fact that an individual library could have everything that its users would require or expect, and at the same time, it is, as a matter of fact, it is expected that anything that is expected of its users should by its users should be made available to them. So these are contradicting situations, and the libraries have found out their way through resource sharing. If we further continue and look into the why of resource sharing, you would see here that I have taken a statistics that as a result of a sample study, it was found out that in USA alone, periodicals had registered a increase in price by around 7.9%. It is a little old that it was in 2002, and it has been increasing. So this is a very high price rise in periodicals, and as a majority of the publications is published from there, it implies that there is a rise in the prices of documents. This is just an example to substantiate the view that their prices are increasing. Another factor that goes against the libraries maintaining and managing them individually is that the rate of conversion of currency is also against developing countries and like India, and therefore it affects the capacity of libraries to acquire alone. And these another factor, even if you have the finances available with you, the number of documents is increasing so fast that you will not be able to store all of them at one place, and that is another problem that exists. If we go further and see why we have to go for resource sharing, we will see that this point is very valid, that we are there for the users, and if the users are demanding, if their demands have changed, their requirements have changed, libraries have to adapt to them. You cannot expect the library users to come down in their demands. No, whatever they ask for, we have to find a way out, and thus resource sharing is a answer to that. Now the libraries also have to show their accountability. That is very important of any organization, and similarly of libraries also. That means if they exist, why they exist? Because they are existing at the due to the users only, the taxpayers, and they have to show their accountability, why they should be given funds, or why should they exist, what for are they existing, and thus this accountability is very important in the scenario today, which is the scenario of increasing competition. So if the libraries do not show the accountability, they have no right to exist. So these are the reasons why the libraries have to share their resources. They have no answer to this. Even if they are able to acquire, they have the funds, they will not be able to acquire because of the limitations, because of the ever increasing number of these that are coming. We are in no dearth of information, but at the same time it is that we cannot have everything at our own disposal. It is there in an indirect way, but not directly by the library, and that is why we have come to this concept of different libraries acquiring different kinds of materials and later on helping each other by sharing them with others, and that is what is resource sharing. Now if we have just a glimpse of what is happening today, again just to understand it better, this concept of resource sharing, it is that customized services are the talk of the day. What do we mean by that? Customized services means that our users are coming with different demands and requirements. It is not that earlier it used to be generalized demands, broad-based demands, and that could have been satisfied just by providing them the whole documents. But today they want active service, they want more participation from the point of view of the information personnel. The users want more participation, they want more active participation, they want products and services customized as per their needs. So this is one that is important. Then this requires the staff to be more interactive with the users. Interactive means understanding their demands more, better, while discussing with them, clarifying their demands and needs. And this is another that requires the information personnel or staff to be more agile, more interactive, more aware of their users and their demands. In fact, at times be knowing it before they really demand for it. So this in a way implies that staff has to be relieved from their routine course, the routine duties that they have to attend to, because if they are generally involved in these routine duties, they will not find time to be at the disposal of their users, to be free to talk to them, to be free to understand them better. So this requires that the staff are relieved of their routine core duties, and it is here that the ICT or the computer in general comes to our rescue, which is made for doing routine core duties, and those where it is more of interaction with the users, it is the professional staff that does it. So this is the scenario today. Now how resource sharing comes as a rescue to all these problems that we have been discussing. if we see these points in these slides, we see that how resource sharing is a solution is that all libraries do not have to acquire all the documents that they require. They would share the documents, thus overcoming the problems of increased prices and space. So the three things that we had discussed, that increasing number, increasing prices, and the loss of space or lack of space that is there, these could be solved by resource sharing. This is one. The libraries would have access to large number of documents, thus satisfying the increasing demands of users, and sharing would also allow the libraries to use documents in different formats. There is a implicit point here, and that is that even if a library cannot afford to have all different infrastructure, still these different formats of documents could be utilized by sharing the infrastructure of other libraries. It would also allow them to share the expertise, the professional expertise, thus saving on that cost as well as the time. They would now be freed from the routine technical procedures, as that would be done on a common basis between those libraries that are in a mutual agreement of resource sharing. So what we mean to say here is that this is how resource sharing has come to our aid by providing a common pool of documents, a common pool of professional expertise, and as well as common pool of the infrastructure. Now comes to the point how this resource sharing is to be done. And if we see here, we see that these resources that are to be shared are either physical or intellectual. If they in physical, these are infrastructure and documents, and in this intellectual, they are professional expertise. And when we say they are to be shared, it is joint use for mutual benefit. A little bit more on how of sharing, because it is a little difficult at times to visualize that would a library like to share with a library that has not much to offer. Actually, it is a sharing of two different types. Either the sharing is mutually between two libraries, or it is a number of libraries coming together having resources at one place and the libraries sharing them. So this depends on the mutual agreements between the different institutions and organizations, and these have been agreed to, and they do so on these lines that they decide well in advance. We'll be talking of these later on when we discuss the different examples that exist today. Now, how did it start and how it took shape later on? That is what is to be discussed when we'll be talking of evolution of resource sharing. And if you see this slide, we have just shown you here that it began as library cooperation. It was a little difficult to implement initially, but the ICT has enabled the implementation as well as widened its scope. So library cooperation that existed earlier was a very primitive form of resource sharing. In this, it used to be as a matter of agreement between libraries that they would share their collections only, and that service used to be called the interlibrary loan. But as you might have experienced also, it didn't exist in all different kinds of libraries, and it existed generally in special and research libraries. What was the reason? Why was it so? The reason was, one, that it was not expected, it was not really required in different kinds of libraries because of the demand made by the users. The demands of the users were such that they could be met from within the resources of the libraries. It was only in the research libraries or special libraries where there was a heavy demand, where the users were interested in such kinds of documents that were relatively new or costly or rarely available, that such services were really required. So it was not required in all different kinds of libraries. And where it was really practiced also, it was a little difficult earlier to practice because of the reasons like, if a document is taken out from a library to be used by the users in other libraries, what would happen if the users of this library required it? It was really a difficulty. Had it been a number of copies available with this library, it could have been done. But even if these copies were there and they were still limited and there was a heavy demand in this library, again it would be difficult. So a solution was found out that in case the other library really required this document, it could have been parts of this documents that could be made copies of and taken away to be used by the other library. But then there were certain other implications there also, and also these facilities of copying were not that much at that time. So it was again one more point, that was the geographical distances that were involved, and that also made it difficult for the libraries to practice this service that was called interlibrary loan. To overcome this problem of geographical distances, generally this services used to exist between libraries that were in geographical vicinity, those that were close by. A person would go from one library to the other library, the staff person, he would get it for the user in his library or her library, provide it to the user for a limited time period on very strict conditions, and it was later on returned to that library. Because of these difficulties, we would have seen that this service was not so actively provided by libraries. But we are very lucky that it started with the provision of the photocopying facilities, the Xeroxing facilities, that it was made a little more active, this particular service. And with the developments in the other ICTs, like the developments in the transfer of documents, like the fax facilities, or the facilities of microforms, that the documents could be made available as microforms and made available to other institutions or organizations. And then later on the advances in the telecommunication technology, where the documents were available as soft copies in different e-forms that could be shared, that could be made available to the other library, that this service grew later on. So this is how this started as a service. Now it took different forms later on, but if we have to see the evolution, we have to understand that the Library of Congress has a major role to play here, because it was Library of Congress that thought of the cooperation among libraries, and it is here that they started cooperative cataloging as early as beginning of 20th century, and this cooperative cataloging was a very big boost to this service. Why? Because cooperative cataloging enabled the participating libraries to know about each other's resources. Because if they had not known about each other's resources, it was a step, one more step here, that a library would have to first of all find out whether it is available there, then only it would further proceed. But by having the cooperative catalogs available with each other, they could know well in advance what is available where, and thus it was very easy for them to do. So here Library of Congress has a role to play. So another thing that happened as a result of this was that these union catalogs that were made available were also standardized to some extent because of the practice of Library of Congress making it available. This we have just now discussed earlier also, that the difficulties that could be overcome due to this was the difficulties of geographical distance, the difficulty of transmission of document that we have just now discussed, as well as the duplication of document, and one more that is very important, that is the speed of service. Because see, if we are not able to provide it speedily, it is of no use. Rather we can say it is better than not being provided. So this is another difficulty that used to exist earlier, and the ICTs made it easier, and thus it was more actively done, this service. If we are talking of beginnings, just as a historical knowledge, we should also know that this has been quoted by Call, H.K. Call, who has worked in this area. He quotes the instance of library cooperation as early as 200 BC between the Alexandria Library and the Pergamum Library. So it existed very long back. That is an example. Another example, he cites Cross mentioning cooperation between monastery libraries in the 13th century. So as long back as that also there used to be cooperation, because this is very much evident otherwise also from the other fields that we have seen. The barter system existed, and whenever you think of the society, it is difficult for individuals as well as organizations to sustain individually. They have to work in collaboration and cooperation with each other. So this is the beginnings of the this resource sharing. Now here we have the organizations also that came into being, and that is worked in this direction towards resource sharing, and it is here that the FID that exists no more has an important role. That was the universal decimal classification that we see today. Basically it started with the efforts of two gentlemen, Paul Otlet and Henry LaFontaine, as long back as 1895, when they attempted to compile a world index to published information. Why this was also a step to make known what and where it is. So that was their main aim at that point of time, but because it was very long back, it was very difficult. This could not have been made possible at that time. So what they finally gave was UDC as a tool, and this was as a tool to provide as a control towards the published information that existed. So that is one. IFLA is another organization that also has worked for this, that is resource sharing, and it has its programs like the universal availability of publications and the universal bibliographic control. These are the programs of IFLA that were in this direction towards making resources available worldwide. Similarly, at the level of the organization, another efforts that were made were by UNICIST, and that is the World Science Information System, that was especially for the sciences to make available what all has been published, and thus another step towards helping libraries which could not have been done individually by them, but at the level of the organization it was done to help them to satisfy the ever increasing demand of their users. So that was, we just started with the individual libraries, then we talked of the different international organizations. Similarly, some other organizations also started this process, the efforts towards providing what all has been published at different places internationally, and it is here the indexing and abstracting services could be given as examples. The physics abstracts, chemical abstracts, biological abstracts, these were all prepared, and this was another tool of control on the literature that was being made available, and that too a huge amount at a very fast pace. These tools could control on that, could have a control. That doesn't mean that they stopped this or slowed down this process, but control here we mean to say that making available what, by whom and where. So these were all efforts in different directions by different organizations. Another organizational effort we can give example here was from the information systems that started and came into picture. These information systems were at international level, and examples could be given here of the International Nuclear Information System and the another one in the field of agriculture. These are INIS and AGRIS, and these are also another examples that were towards providing access to as well as literature at one place, and this was a very systematized effort that was done, and it was involving all countries. And for like this INIS and AGRIS, we had the centers in our country India also. Like for INIS we have the BAC, and for AGRIS we have IARI. So these are the organizational efforts that were done. Another example towards this organizational effort was the document delivery service that was started, and that was by the publishers, and it was in the form of Adonis. And this was started by John Wiley, Elsevier, Pergamon, Blackwell Scientific, Academic Press and Springer. They provided index to the articles appearing in 219 biomedical journals between 1987 and 88, and this was provided in the form of CD-ROM. And it is here that the British Library also played a role actively. They developed a software for retrieving this information that was provided in the different indexes. So this was, see, this is a field like biomedicine, where biomedical journals that was very fast changing, new developments happening very fast, and this had to be made available, and this was a unique innovative step that it was made available in the form of CD-ROM that could be easily acquired by the libraries, and thus their users could be satisfied. So this is another organizational effort. With the developments in the technology, another big thing that happened was in the form of networks. The data networks came into picture, and these were again available at the level of countries, and it is these that made available the networks amongst libraries also. And here we can see that these are the local area networks, the wide area networks and the metropolitan area networks. And the local area networks existed at the level of the library, and the metropolitan area networks existed in the metropolitan cities. And internet is another example that could make the different libraries connect to each other and make them advertise what they had for the benefit of others. In the area of local area network, the libraries are moving very fast. Even in our country, we see that the resources are made available to the clientele not only in their workplace but also in their at their residence, so that they can access and know what is available with whom. And in the area of metropolitan area networks, this happened 20-25 years back. It started when we had the networks in different metropolitan cities, and it all started with Calcutta when we had this network called CalibNet. If you see this slide, we have named these different networks. The CalibNet that started in Calcutta, and in Delhi it was Delnet, Bombay Bonet, and similarly the Malibnet, Edinet, these were in Ahmedabad and Mangalore, and similarly Mylibnet in Mysore. So, and Madras Malibnet. So these were the different metropolitan areas network. And another very important network that was the efforts of UGC that we have mentioned here at the end, that is the InflibNet, Information Library Network. That was the efforts of UGC and Professor Yashpal to help the academic libraries share their resources with each other, as well as share the expertise. And this organization that came into being to provide professional expertise to the academic libraries, as well as to the making available to the users of academic libraries the different resources in the form of databases as well as full text resources, and it has come up very fast, and not only making available resources but also expertise and the technical know-how as well as infrastructure to different libraries. So these are the developments of the day. Besides these networks, there are networks in the areas of different disciplines and subjects, like in management you have a network. Similarly, it is coming up in different types of libraries also, like public libraries networks and the different other types of libraries also. But in our country, major work has been done by this InfluMnet. Another step a way ahead of this is the consortia that are coming up, and these to name a few, these are the INDEST, that is in the area of science and technology. Similarly, the CSIR net and the network by UGC, that is the InfoNet, the consortia by UGC, that is the InfoNet. So this is again the libraries and publishers coming together to make available resources that could not have been made possible by individual libraries themselves, but it is the libraries, the organizations, the publishers coming together to share the resources, make them available to the users. And these resources are not only the traditional print form of resources but also the e-resources. But these today, when we are talking of these networks and consortia, we are more limiting ourselves to the e-resources, because most of the literature that is coming today, it is the e-resources, and the users who matter are those who are interested in e-resources. They are the convenient form of resources. They are those that are easily updated, that are made available in any part of the globe and to be used in any other part of the globe. So it is these that are coming up. It started with traditional print resources. It started with the problems of just the collection. It moved on to the problems of sharing the expertise, professional expertise, and it went off to the e-resources. And here it is basically, it is the very important forms of literature in the form of journals, in the form of patents, in the form of standards that really matter to the research community that are there. So this is what we discussed today in resource sharing. We started with the background to resource sharing when we discussed the changing nature of clientele, the changing nature of documents, the changing trends in libraries. Then we discussed what do we mean by resource sharing. Then we discussed why is it that resource sharing is required, and then we discussed how it is done, and then we discussed the evolution of this concept of resource sharing, and finally to the latest trends in resource sharing. We discussed with examples from our country, India, and this is what is we thought we have a discussion on resource sharing. In case you have any doubts, you are most welcome to put any queries, and we have provided our email addresses in our program guides. You are most welcome for that. Thanks for a patient hearing. Wish you all best of luck. Thank you.